What if I told you that you are not completely human? Not in a philosophical way, not as an idea, but physically, inside your body. Right now, in your DNA, there are fragments of something that didn't come from modern humans. A hidden trace of a past most people never even think about. Because when we imagine human history, we picture something simple, one species, evolving, becoming us, a straight line from the past to the present. But reality is far more complicated than that. Because for most of our history, we were not alone. Tens of thousands of years ago, different types of humans lived on this planet at the same time. Not just us, but other human species, different branches of the same evolutionary story. They walked the same land, hunted the same animals, and faced the same dangers. And one of the most well-known among them was the Neanderthals. They lived across Europe and parts of Asia for hundreds of thousands of years, strong, adapted, resilient, built for survival in a world far harsher than ours. For a long time, they were misunderstood, seen as primitive, less intelligent, almost animal-like. But that idea couldn't be further from the truth. They made tools with precision, controlled fire, lived in organized groups, and survived in environments where most modern humans would struggle to last even a few days. In many ways, they were not that different from us, not less human, just different humans. For a long time, scientists believed a simple story, a story that was easy to understand, easy to explain, and easy to accept. According to this idea, modern humans, people like us, eventually replaced every other human species on Earth. Slowly, but completely. The Neanderthals disappeared, and we remained. One species survived, one story continued, a clean break between worlds, no overlap, no connection, just extinction, followed by dominance. And for decades, this explanation shaped the way we understood human history. It appeared in textbooks, it was taught in schools, it became the standard narrative, the version of the past that most people never questioned. Because it made sense. Humans evolved, became more advanced, and replaced everything that came before, simple, logical, final. But there was one problem. This story was built mostly on fossils and assumptions. Scientists could study bones, they could compare shapes, measure skulls, and estimate how different these ancient humans were. But they couldn't see the full picture, not yet, because the most important evidence was still hidden, locked inside something far smaller than any fossil: DNA. And when researchers finally developed the technology to analyze ancient DNA, they expected to confirm the story they already believed, that humans and Neanderthals were separate, that their histories never truly overlapped, that there was a clear boundary between us and them. But instead, they found something completely unexpected. When scientists finally compared modern human DNA with ancient remains, they weren't expecting a surprise. They believed they already knew the answer. Humans were separate. Neanderthals were gone. End of story. But what they discovered was something hidden in plain sight. Something that had been there all along, inside us. People living outside Africa today carry genetic material from the Neanderthals. Not as a theory, not as a possibility, not as a controversial idea, but as a measurable, physical, undeniable part of who they are. This wasn't speculation. It was written directly into the human genome, a genetic signal, repeated across millions of people. And when scientists measured it more precisely, they found something even more striking. Around 1 to 2% of the DNA in many modern humans comes from Neanderthals. 1 to 2% may sound small, but in genetic terms, that is enormous. It means that thousands of fragments inside your DNA did not originate from modern humans alone. They came from another human species that lived tens of thousands of years ago. And those fragments have been passed down through countless generations, all the way to you. Which leads to a conclusion that completely changes the story of human history. Our ancestors didn't just encounter another species, they didn't just compete with them. They didn't just observe them from a distance. They connected with them. They lived side by side, shared the same world, and at some point, they became part of the same story. Think about that for a moment. Not as an abstract idea, but as something real. Something that actually happened. Somewhere in the distant past, tens of thousands of years ago, two different human species met. Not in theory, not in imagination, but in the real world. They stood on the same land, under the same sky, breathing the same air. They walked through the same forests, crossed the same rivers, and faced the same dangers: cold, hunger, survival. Their lives were not separate stories. They were part of the same world, and at some point, those worlds touched. Not just briefly, not just from a distance, but in ways that would leave a permanent mark. Because those encounters didn't disappear. They didn't fade away with time. They left something behind, a genetic trace carried forward through thousands of generations, a mark that still exists today, a mark that exists in you. Inside your DNA, there are fragments of a story that began long before anything we call history. A story of connection, not separation. And this changes the way we think about what it means to be human. Because the line between us and them, between modern humans and ancient ones, was never as clear as we once believed. It was always blurred, always shifting, always connected. And Neanderthals are not the only example. As scientists continue to study ancient DNA, they realize something even more surprising. The story didn't end with just one other human species. There were more. One of the most mysterious among them is a group known as the Denisovans. What makes them so unusual is how little we physically know about them. Their existence was first discovered not through a complete skeleton, but from a small fragment of bone found deep inside a cave in Siberia. A single piece, almost nothing to go on. And yet, when scientists analyzed its DNA, they realized it belonged to a completely different human group, a group that had lived, interacted, and eventually disappeared from the earth. But just like the Neanderthals, they did not vanish without a trace, because their genetic influence can still be found in modern populations today. In some regions of the world, people carry small fragments of Denisovan DNA, passed down through thousands of years, which means that once again, different human species didn't live in isolation. They met, they interacted, and they became part of each other's story. The more we uncover about ancient DNA, the clearer one idea becomes. Human history is not a straight line. It never was. It is something far more complex, a network, constantly shifting and evolving, a web of connections between different human groups, stretching across continents and across time itself. And every discovery we make adds another thread to that web. So what does all of this really mean? It means that the story of humanity is not what we thought it was. It's not a straight line, not a single path leading from the past to the present. It is something far more complex, a story of encounters, of connections, of different human worlds meeting and shaping each other. And every one of us carries a part of that story. Inside our DNA, there are fragments of ancient lives, echoes of people who lived tens of thousands of years ago, people who walked the same earth, but were not exactly like us. And yet, they are still part of us. So when you look in the mirror, you're not just looking at a modern human. You're looking at the result of ancient worlds colliding, blending, and surviving together. And maybe that's what being human really is. Not something pure, not something separate, but something connected across time, across generations, and across every person who has ever lived. And if you think about it, that makes you part of something far bigger than you ever imagined.